I'm willing to see what exactly Gold Owl has going on for it. Like this chapter really altered my. I don't know about, or I can say fully like the expectations for Gold Owl, but it's more of like my interest in like what is Mishima planning here. Like just the not Gold Owl the guild, but like Gold Owl the plot line is like shaping up a lot better in my opinion. Just because it's looking so weird now. Like before, it was okay. A powerful new guild has become a problem. We only have like one character there, but obviously, fighting one character will more than likely lead to more of them showing up and doing things, especially when they're a guild at the top of their respective general areas. I don't think some random like low level guild is gonna go after anybody, especially for anybody in their guild. We know like there's a whole lot of guilds that are just kind of more of that business side. They don't have as deep care as like some of the other guilds do of their members. But regardless of which, it's like we have now the weirdest addition to the arc. And I want to wait and talk about when we get there because it was such a left field move. I'm still uncertain like that there was a real panel at the end of chapter 114. But as we left off, we had Gray encountered with Sai, and Sai had used what was it, the love bond spell, not spell, I guess, alchemy transmutation to turn Gray into Juvia, and then Gray was like working to figure out like how to use Juvia's abilities and stuff. And it's, I will say, because this is obviously like been an ongoing thing around Gray in 100 Years Quest, is like stuff for like Gray fights. I will say this before I even really get into the context, or not, I guess the content of like the chapter and the context around what's going on with Gray, but there was very little chance Sai was going to be that fight for Gray. And I think that's something that people, like, before they even make a complaint about Gray and Sai not being a great fight, there was there was little to no way that Sai was going to be what exactly, like, the fight that Gajeel has, like, going on for him. Or like, Urza versus Laxus. Like, it's not going to be one of those. Renatsu versus Suzaku. It's not going to be one of those kind of fights. Sai, as, you know, I don't want to act like I called it like it was some big brain call. I think it was one that felt very like logical when you thought about like the context of the current like events and like what's exactly going on in this arc and the people that are involved in this arc. And that was that when you really look at where we're at, everything going on with the Dogre Labyrinth, Dogremag himself, the race to destroy the Dogre course and everything while Natsu and Suzaku are fighting him. Sai did not come off as a big threat character. He doesn't look intimidating. He doesn't act intimidating. His abilities are like they're good in general. Like I would assume in a lot of more regular scenarios, but obviously like with powerful people, it's not that good of a hack. Like it's not gonna always be that good of a hack. Some characters it might work on, but it's very situational. I think the higher you go strength wise, the more a character is going to be like situationally scared of this or worried about this. Most characters after like you get to a threshold are not gonna really be that bothered by what he's got. And especially like the weak bond he used, which I thought was like it was a weird, like, dangerous hacks that he was able to get, but at the same time, it's less situational than, like, Love Bond. I wonder, like, how he would really, like, use the Rival Bond. Like, I feel like that's something that's more of, like, if these other two were debuffs, it'd be, like, a buff. Like, if you used it on somebody strong and turn it into somebody else that, like, would somehow benefit a scenario. Because I don't imagine Rival Bond is going to be that good in most scenarios against an opponent. Whereas Love Bond is like a maybe, and then the weak bond, that could be useful more often than not, but we saw with Gray, it's a mindset thing, it's not like a legit power level thing. So if a character has some form of mentality that puts him in actually a advantage position, then it just makes this dude's ability pretty much nothing. Because like the only thing he really had directly offensive was like Sai made his destruction chain and was just kind of swinging that around. And I assume he can make other weapons with alchemy, but as far as we know, he doesn't have any like outright like dangerous abilities that he can use. Like, oh, what was that? Like I had like my sound hiccup and I heard myself for a second. But like imagine he could like make the metal in the chain like turn to acid or something, or some form of dangerous ability like that. If he had something like that, I would see him more of like a threat, but I don't think anybody really saw what Sai was design wise, where he was I mean when he was stopped by Gray's ice wall, like base casual Gray ice wall. So I didn't think he was going to be that powerful, and his ability didn't seem like it was designed to be one that was like a big threat. He came off as I was actually pretty stoked to call, because I think this was right on the nose, that he was going to be a character who just had a couple really tricky abilities to work around, and if you can figure out how to work around him, he's not a huge problem. But Gray ends up just trying to like work around using Juvia's style of magic. He's pretty much using water make, which is funny because Juvia can use water make. We know she made water make blood back when Gray was hurt by himself in the Invul fight, but she just kind of uses water manipulation, with it just being water magic for the most part. She doesn't have the same, maker magic style or dragon slaying takeover or anything like that. She just pretty much just uses her spells. But Gray like starts out using like water make lance, which I will say like that one should have been more dangerous. I think that he's just not doing it the same way that it's valuable with water, because water make hammer, I can see where it might not be as good as this normal scenario, like using water ice make hammer, but water obviously can just do different effects, and you can condense water and like pressurize it for more impact. But when he used the lance, like the thing about water, if you pressurize it enough, like water will go through pretty much anything. Like it'll just go right through steel, like no problem. But I imagine Gray doesn't know that. Like I think that's like an advanced water technique. But once he started kind of like using stuff like his battle axe, where he's understanding to do it more of like a bladed type attack. He used like Gungnir. I feel like Gungnir would have like really tore this dude apart, but I think it's just because of the water, that unless he's directly like pierced by something like because like when it comes to the battle axe, just trying to make, obviously you're trying to make that like thin blade, whereas like Gungnir is like a big, pretty much like water spear pillar, but it's never been like it's never really been used like you would expect like the piercing attacks to work. So like having it encase him, it doesn't do nearly the same damage as you would expect. But with water make, it still looks good, but I imagine it's not what like the optimal level it could be. I don't think Gray understands like that aspect of water, but I mean like he literally just started using it for like 30 seconds, and Juvia I don't think ever has run into a problem where she would need to do that. So I don't think she's got any real kind of scenarios where she's going to be just like where Gray's going to be just seeing it to see it. Like we've seen Juvia do like heavy water attacks, but we haven't seen any scenarios where she realizes like water pressure increase for what X, Y, or Z. I guess she kind of doesn't really need it because of like some of the way that some of her attacks work, but I think to the excessive degree of where I'm trying to go with it is something that we haven't seen from her. She just kind of has it at like a baseline, whereas like if she just really pressurized and condensed her water, she should be able to shoot through like pretty much diamonds and just cut through anything. But anyway, Gray starts to get a little bit of the hang of it. Makes sense. He doesn't really have to alter his style. All the abilities he used were ones he actually already had. So I think that he's perfectly fine there, and pretty much just like having that edge in that fight. Because the issue obviously wasn't Gray was weak in Juvia's body. Juvia's a very capable wizard. She's got good magic. But it was that he wasn't able to really use the magic properly, and then gaining a level of hold on it to where he didn't have to fully fight like just straight out be Juvia. He kind of fought more as like a hybrid between the two, because like I said, he was using his own techniques, but he was doing them with Juvia's magic and in like slightly altered styles, obviously, in like their appearance and whatnot. So it was just I think it was an easy win for Gray at that point. And on top of that, Sai not having a So not having like a really dangerous type of hacks, like offensive hacks against Juvia, like Juvia's water body more so, just like set him as like this is a scenario he can't win, unless he does something like transmutes the water into steam or does something kind of crazy like that. Then I like there was no way for him to win. There was no scenario I think that he really could have like worked around that. Also, just like the part where Gray was like trying to think on like parts of Juvia, and he was just thinking of nice emotional, happy and like funny moments with her. Just I thought that was a very wholesome scene. And then he started to remember, obviously, like using her water like a blade and whatnot. But when Sai uses, he's like, I gotta use my forbidden technique. You know, this isn't looking in my favor. Weak bond. The thing is, like, I was wondering when it was like a forbidden technique because it doesn't seem to be any form of drawback or specialness to like the technique at all. Because usually there's some form of indicator of it's like, oh, this is an extra level. Visually, it's like he grabs his own wrist the same way. There's no like breaking of the gloves. There's no blood like he has to spit up. There's no like item he has to sacrifice. It's just like he uses it, and Gray turns into himself. And the reason that is like he explains that it turns you into somebody. What does exactly say? I think he says that the person you look down on the most, the person you think is the weakest in the world. So somebody you don't have, like, obviously, like you think you think is just weak. It works similar to, I guess, the general opposite of Wolfen's whole ability. I almost said Wolfheim, but it's like those two. And then it's funny because every time I think about Wolfheim, I just remember like he was never confirmed dead, but it's not the conversation this way. With Wolfen's whole thing where it turns into someone you see as strong, but this obviously being the opposite, turning into somebody you think is weak. So Gray turning back into himself as he like figured it's like, well, I guess I see myself as pretty weak, and I think that makes sense because Gray would see everything in terms of going over the whole outlook of like who you think is weak. I don't think based entirely on power levels. I think it would be based on like more of a personal outlook on like the individual and stuff. And we do know that there's the whole bit of how people in general are weak. Humans are made to be alone. That's why they have guilds and stuff. And a lot of the people in the guild are able to live happier and be stronger because they are in a guild with other people that they like and support them and stuff. It's obviously that whole structure that's worked for a lot of them. I know Lax is very much developed around that after the whole Battle of Fairy Tale arc. So I thought this was nice for Gray. I don't think that like none of this I think except for Gray's bit on himself wasn't it like I think anything kind of like out of the ordinary because like Gray having that low of opinion on stuff I think has to be important for upcoming Gray. It's not like it's like he hates himself, but it's like he sees himself as weak, and obviously like I think that has to do with Gray's whole spot with Juvia in Alvarez, and where that'll go I'm hoping will be what's like the center point like starting bit of a Gray plot line of him getting stronger, and this ability that he used in the chapter is going to be a step in it. And I'll talk a little bit more about my idea in just a second because I want to talk about like the move actually as well. So once he's like okay, I got my powers back to normal. Even if I'm weak, I'm in the guild, then I can be as strong as I want to be. And he uses Ice Make Cold Slicer. So the attack itself, this is what I'm going to talk about because I want to talk about the idea for Gray and its progression. Because like I said, one of the ongoing issues people have had with Gray specifically, for 100 Years Quest isn't with Gray's writing and stuff for his personal character. It's all been around him in terms of fights and stuff, and his capabilities and his abilities as a wizard. Which I would agree. I think it's important for like a series like this where he's directly in the main cast to get those things, especially when the other characters around him are. So having Gray have the whole part where he's flexing around like Juvia's magic, trying to feel the water in the area, and fighting in a slightly different style, I think combined with his bit on like seeing himself as weak is prime material to start up a plot line again of Gray getting stronger. And I think that my theory around that at some point Natsu is going to train with Diablos. Other Dragon Slayers are welcome, but primarily obviously Natsu's the main character. But I think that Gold Owl was introduced also because it's not a coincidence. I think that it's the number one. Diablos is the number one wizard guild on the continent, while Gold Owl is the number one alchemy guild. And Maker Magic is similar to alchemy, so that can be where Gray goes to go and train instead. So you just split the characters up for a little bit. I think that would make sense before 100 Years Quest if there's some form of short time skip. I think like maybe like a year and a half would be really good. Just give it like a time for like characters to kind of split up and do things and get a lot stronger and more honed. Because like, then you could do like, okay, Urza is on level with Dark Dragon Slayer Knight straight up. It's not just, oh, Misaki, who's, you know, caught off guard, being surprised, plus Urza has to do like a charged special attack, pretty much like her biggest offensive attack has currently, and just make it more even. Whereas like Natsu could master like Dragon Force or something, we can get it all set up. Like this could be what sets up for like Ignia and stuff when we get to like bigger areas of the 100 Years Quest. You know, the kind of like giant clash areas, and maybe we'll get to stuff like Rebellious and whatnot. But Gray using the Cold Slicer. The thing is, like, the attack itself is, it's nothing that is like crazy advanced or crazy out of the ordinary, but I think the value in it and where I think it might be going, but I think it supports like the whole idea of like Gray's power arc, pretty much, we'll just call it, is the way that it's formed. So he just does Ice Make and he pretty much just swings his hand, but it's not like Sai, just ice appears on him, he's frozen. It's covered a little bit by the sound effects on the panel, but you see where, like, right where Gray's hand starts, you see a trail of where it goes up and it starts freezing. And I'm really hoping that not like directly like a Dragon Slayer does it, but essentially like instead of covering himself in ice and fighting like a Dragon Slayer, is Gray as a Devil Slayer will freeze the environment around him as he moves. Like, I think it'd be cool if every single attack that Gray doesn't just shoot a freezing attack. Like, imagine it's like he uses Ice Make Lance or Freeze Lance or a Devil Slayer version. It doesn't really matter at which level it takes, but just like he has a technique that does it. Imagine each Lance, when it lands, instead of just doing like where it makes that kind of collision, little ice set of ice spikes, like it just makes a little grow up tree or whatever of ice, a little shrub. It freezes the ground around it. It's like hits, does like a little AoE flash freeze really fast. It doesn't have to be like the whole room. I guess it would depend on the room. But like imagine like a regular room and it's just like a standard bedroom and it's just like hits, freezes that room. That's how big each of those are, but he's shooting multiple. Or he does something like as he's moving, every step is freezing the area around him. Every arm swing is like this freezing areas around him. I think that could be a huge upgrade in his moveset for Gray, because everybody pretty much has just gotten really cool advancements on their magic. I don't think anybody's really had outright a whole new style. Urza's even is involving other styles, but more in a support way to buff her primary magic. Wendy's is advancing her enchantments and whatnot. Natsu's dragon slaying magic is generally advancing in different ways, like combining his Fire Dragon King mode and Dragon Force. Lucy's got her Stardress mixes, and now she's getting even more capable with like summoning amounts and her fighting strategies. Like there's upgrades going all around. The thing is, Gray has just felt last, but I think maybe it's one of those things that it's planned to be last. And I'll use just a really good comparison, because I think this is one of the things that it's like a complaint that I've heard, but I think that it's just one of those things that it makes sense in the moment, but really when you get the full picture, you understand. And that's how, if you look at early Fairy Tail, you look before Sirius Island, I think it just in general, say all the way up before Sirius Island, the only character that has a later lore, like real lore bit out of the main cast than Natsu is Happy. But I think Happy's is one that was more of like, it's like a bonus rather than like, I don't think anybody going in blind expected like a pretty Happy Exceed lore centered arc like how Edalus had. But as it were, if you compare it to Natsu, Lucy, Gray, Wendy, and Urza, everybody except Natsu, like, they got lore first. Even Wendy got a bit of lore before Natsu got lore, and like they added stuff to the anime for Natsu, but we like the closest you really get in the manga, and I count the anime because like the Mishima directly worked and approved on the anime, so it should count as canon. But otherwise, it's like when Guildart shows up, and Wendy's already part of the guild at that point. But I think the reason is that is on purpose, is because you have the fact that you were going to have Lucy have her backstory, everybody go first, while Natsu is interacting. Well, I guess no, technically, if you want to go by timeline, I guess I'd have to say Gray with Galuna Island. But you know what I mean. These characters were having their backstories told, like the first bits to understand them, and Natsu was there, and it was more of seeing Natsu's direct line of information in response. Like Natsu was very directly involved with Gray and Kelowna Island, with Urza and Tower of Heaven, with Lucy during the Phantom Lord arc. There's a way of like he's just generally kind of there interacting with them, and like his responses and the way that their characters and dynamic work through those events. But because of that, as I think that's why Mishima put Natsu's backstory out of them pretty much last, especially when you look at the full picture, because it's like you're just gonna feel like, man, it's taking forever this, but it's like it's just by design of like how the characters and stuff are supposed to go. I think if Gray is going to go towards Gold Owl, that Mishima's just been holding out on stuff because maybe he's going to do a lot more with Gray in the future. So he's like, oh, like look at it like Natsu in Elentier. Natsu really didn't get any fights or anything special in Elentier, but I think that's because Mishima knew, like, you know, right before Elentier was Drasil and with Alderaan. Natsu had a lot of great moments then. He's had a lot of great moments already in the Dogromag arc. So in between those two arcs, being like, okay, this is where I'll put some time on the other characters, give Natsu cooldown, we'll do stuff with everybody next arc. But maybe this is setting up for like a bigger thing for Gray from here. I'm hoping so. It's one of those things where it's like, I can't say for certain, but based off of what we've been given, I feel like it's the direction we're gonna go. I think it makes a lot of sense for Gray and for Gray's character to go down this line, because I don't think Mishima would bring up the whole weakness thing for no reason. He's done that. Like he's done some more things with Wendy and Lucy this arc. Theirs is literally more where like power levels were concerned, whereas Gray's is way more of his own mentality around himself. Like, I think there's definitely scenarios, obviously, where Gray can get stronger, but Gray doesn't run into the same level of just direct fight problems, whereas, like, Lucy and Wendy run into. Like, Wendy had obviously young, not as experienced, had a lot of untapped potential she hadn't gained control of yet, or gotten the level of enchantment that would make her more of a threat as an enchantress. And then Lucy, obviously, like, Lucy's strong, capable, but she, as a summoner, gets in a lot of scenarios where she's, like, fighting, like, powerful melee people, and usually people directly that are, like, stronger than her going into the fight. Whereas, it depends with Gray. Gray, you know, obviously with Sai, where this was not a power level problem fight. This guy has a tricky technique kind of fight. So, I'm like I said, I'm interested. I really want to know where this goes, and what exactly the plan is with Gray. If Mishima just, you know, this is just a off fight and this was it, like that, I'd be really bummed out about it. But I gotta at least wait to see, like, if there's a follow up of it, like, and that's gonna be the next time probably Gray has any form of focus. If we're gonna get like a Gray part, because we got a good Gray part with Celine, and I'm guessing that, like, that we're gonna get some good Gray parts coming up, because obviously Mishima wants to do some stuff with Gray. I think that Sai is just not the character we'd be hoping for. So maybe we'll get another fight for him. Like, we'll get that Scullion fight, who knows. I really want it to happen so I can do a video on, like, Scullion as a character, because I feel like I just need, like, one good fight with him, and maybe, like, it doesn't need to have a backstory chapter. I would love to have some. But, like, I just would love to have, like, one more good full chapter of just, like, getting stuff from him and Madbull done. Sweet, let's talk about him. But also because I think that's more of a fight where I think we can get that with Gray. Because I think if Gray can, like, freeze his environment, that can be, like, really sick upgrades. Like, not just, like, Ice makes Silver, but, like, the way that he's doing it here. in a fight with Scully, and I think that would be perfect for his rematch. So we'll see. We'll see what exactly is going to happen with Gray. Maybe he'll fight like an actual strong guy from Gold Isle. Who knows how many people are in here? We only know 2. Maybe we'll run into one of those Signario sisters. Who knows? But Gray pretty much just takes Sai down from the one attack. I didn't expect Sai to be a huge threat to Gray. I didn't. I thought he was going to have some tricky abilities, and that was going to mostly be it. And that's about what we were presented for the most part. And right when after Gray beats him, like, Sai's like talking about God Brother, which is very weird. Like calling him God Brother, I thought was pretty funny. It could mean a lot of things, and I thought that was interesting because if you were like watching this in the anime, I was like, obviously, like the chapters already I'm already talking about, but say you were going at this fresh, because even it could be if you were just reading the chapter itself fresh. But essentially, just this scene, you heard God Brother, and he was talking about Signario's sister. It's like, okay, so maybe that's another character, like his brother, or it's a character that he refers to as God Brother, or something. Like, it can mean a lot of things. Like, not what we directly got. That's like the one that it's like Obito being Toby. Like, it's just one of those things. It's just like, yeah, I feel like if you draw to this conclusion, it'd be so direct that it's like, no way. But I think because nobody expected this is what made it fun. But anyway, we get back to Natsu and Dogremag, and Dogremag just pretty much just steps on Suzaku's face. He does like this cool line about how anytime that humans came and defied the earth, they were met with disasters and calamity. He's like, in every era, humans are stupid like that, I guess. But Natsu, being Natsu, he's just like, it doesn't really matter even if we're dumb, we're still live life to the fullest, because that's how we try to live our lives. Very good. I've always enjoyed that mentality for Natsu. Just like, even when shit is down and things are looking horrible, like there's still stuff ahead. You just kind of get back on your feet and try and fix like the scenario or the situation. Be around the people or do things pretty much that makes that a little bit better for you. Is able to get things back on track. And then we have a really cool interaction between them. And again, this is something that I've been wanting to know more of for 100 Years Quest. And we got obviously back in every arc, I guess, other than Elentier, now that I think about it. Because Dogremag's like, he's like human. I doubt that coming from mutants. And, you got a dragon. Oh, he says dragons. He's going to say dragon smell, but he's like, no, a demon sent on you. But obviously it's both. It's kind of all three. But Natsu says, like, you should get your nose checked. It's ancient history. I chose to be human. I think this is more setup. I don't think this is Natsu just being like, oh yeah, call back to, this is a fixed problem. I think that this is an ongoing problem. Because one, obviously we saw how he was from the fire that he ate from Ignia in Ermina. Like, there's too many similarities in design and personality with the E&D form that he had in Alvarez. But also, we had a whole bit from Alderaan talking about him being a demon. So, Dogremag 2, I don't think this is something that Mishima is, like, keeps nodding at and then doesn't plan to do anything again. But Natsu does obviously have a bit where he's, like, talking about how he's himself, like, he's Natsu, a fairy tale. That obviously makes sense and aligns him with this character. Always pretty hype. Like, this is one of those scenes that's just, like, one of those big character moments, like, whenever it's animated, it always gives you a smile. It's just one of those all-around full circle things for a character, especially a main character. But Dogremag gets hit, he doesn't dodge. This is one of those things, though, obviously, like, it makes sense for him not to dodge because while his cores were up, it wouldn't have mattered. It's like how a character having high super regen, they don't care to dodge because they're going to be fine. But Dogremag gets hit, he thinks he's going to be fine for a second, and then the damage actually, like, shows up. Like, the punch actually keeps going in terms of force. And he's got, like, a couple scratches there, and he's sweating a bit. Obviously, he's surprised. And he's, that his body's been damaged. He's just like, how is this going on? What's happening? How am I hurt? Dogremag, here's the thing with Dogremag. Because this is going to be a big character important thing. And I think it's going to set a lot of opinions on Dogremag. Where Dogremag goes from here. What is his response to this? He needs to summon minions around the cores that are still up. He needs to fight more cautiously and with more technique. He needs to actually be aware now that his opponents can hurt him. This is where I think Dogremag needs to really show his stuff. I don't want him to just be like, I'll keep fighting though I am. I'm not going to take things seriously or anything like that. I think he's smart enough to do something about it, but it's going to be that, okay, well, what is it he's going to do? Like, say he, like, I'd be fully. Oh, I'm trying to think of like, I don't think he would leave Natsu alone unless he like summoned a golem or something to distract him. But otherwise, like, it'd be like, go after the cores, do something better, protect some, like have some form of scheme that will get your situation better, kind of thing. Like I think Dogromag needs to really like take action here. And like I said, I think that'll really give a lot of people impressions. Because I know some people were like talking about like they didn't like how it was similar to Alderaan with like destroying something to weaken him. It's not really the same thing. They both they both cheated in a way to be where they're at. Alderaan had a way to pretty much just stockpile power and get to that level, whereas Dogromag seems to have a system of these cores that cheat him at like a higher level and make him indestructible. And that's also a big factor in this, is that we know Celine said that it doesn't really matter as long as the cores are up, how many people you throw at him, you won't be able to hurt him. So I think that while his cores are up, he's pretty much indestructible. So that being a difference in just straight abilities and not like a power thing is a big gap between comparing the two. And on top of that, Dogromag definitely worked better to hide them and scatter them, whereas Alderaan just sicked his god seeds on people. His will regenerate, but still, it's like, you got to be careful when you put your, stuff in that scenario that can weaken you if damaged. Is on a timer to get you back to like a certain level of power. It's like one of those parts where it's like, I understand why he didn't think that was gonna happen, but still, like, he should have been. I feel like he should have been a little bit more cautious, just a little bit more, especially when some of them started to lose. But I don't think he was in a scenario at that point where he could have like adapted like mid go trying to invent something. He just was trying to end it. But with Dogromag, I'm really hoping that we get something good with Dogromag. I'd love to see just like him starting to like spawn a bunch of golems all throughout the place. If he has any other minions somehow or any abilities that he wants to show, you better showcase him now, because Celine is a cheat for getting around his invincibility. So he's in a scenario where he can't rely on it too much. But then at the end of the chapter, we get Gajeel going, and Gajeel's like saying like, oh, I found a Dogre core. We're at 42 left, I believe. Not 42 destroyed. Let me go back and check. I think it's 42 left. So I think that makes sense that close to the halfway point, Dogromag is starting to take damage. I still think, like, my still idea around it, and personal guess as to how this works power-wise, not the indestructible thing, is I think that as long as they're like that, his human form is on level with his dragon form. Because we know that they're going to their human forms makes them, like, it limits the amount of power they can have and how strong they are. So I think it would make a lot of sense as, like, oh, while this trick is up, I'm able to fight at full power even in this humanoid form. And that would be a good reason to put him in his dragon state and lead other characters to join the fight. But Gajeel runs into a scenario where he's, like, saying he smells one, he's like, oh no, two dragons. And then he turns around and who he sees is God Serena. It says Alchemist Guild Gold Owl 8 Dragon God Serena. What the hell is going on with this dude? So this, it's like, I think there was somebody who was talking about, like, recently Mishima said that there was going to be an older character that would make a comeback. God Serena is the last person I was thinking of. And I will say, because obviously the question is, how is he alive? As long as how he's alive makes sense, I don't care that he's alive again. That's like my thing. As long as the idea makes sense with the context of the story and the character, I think it's fine. It's similar to how, like, Lysana came back. It's not the fact that Lysana came back, because I think the way that she, like, what happened to her, it's like, okay, I can see that making sense with, like, the lore and the way that stuff was structured and the fact that her death was very vague. The problem with her was that she came back and didn't really do too much. I know that's like something that I think a lot of people need to really think about, because it's character coming back, like a son character you thought was dead, and that comes back is not uncommon in fantasy stories. So, but it's like usually the ones that come back then do important things. So like, whereas Lysana didn't really do anything other than like some extra stuff in the anime and whatnot. She's got a couple little bits in Gajeel, but that's about it. But with God Serena, I talked about this actually on Twitter. I point out the thing on his back, but in his old design, there was nothing really to it. I don't think there was anything really for its existence. It's unlike where Larcade, the weapon he had, like, on his back, he could use as like pretty much like a big throwing star. And the item on God Serena's back never did anything. But it's similar to the Wheel of Dharma, which is from Buddhist religion, where it can represent practices that lead to rebirth. So I'm wondering if it's going to be in the lore of God Serena, and maybe why he had the 8 Lacrima, because maybe it does something. Maybe having multiple dragon elements, like maybe it's like this. As we know, once you get to a certain stage of being a dragon slayer, your body will have dragon organs, and as that progresses, you get to eventually to a state where your body can grow new organs. So what if God Serena, because he's as a second gen, because there's the fact that different generations can have different perks and different kind of things, obviously that is like the value of them. Similar to how the dragonification like does that, what if the 8 Lacrima is like a cheat for second gen, to where, oh, it's having multiple Lacrima like to this extent is a way to get a cheat regeneration, like cheat a way to be reborn. Or maybe it'll have to do this backstory, or it could have to do with the Gold Owl. I don't know. The fact that he's gonna have alchemy too is so interesting, because I was thinking about like a scenario, because the last time a character showed up randomly with like that you would have never expected to come back. Obviously, this is more so because we thought this dude was dead, but Blue Note coming back and fighting Natsu like right after the time skip into part 3 was completely unexpected by pretty much anybody. I don't think anybody was expecting him to show up, but he was used, I think, way more of a measuring stick, whereas I don't think God Serena will be beaten nearly as easily as how Blue Note was. I do think Gajeel is going to win, but I think it's going to be way more of a high-level fight, because we know Blue Note was way further back than where Spriggan is. Whereas God Serena, like, he should be stronger, so he should be even higher up than where he was. So, prior him being, like, the bar baseline of what we would go for Spriggan, and then move that a little bit higher up, I think that's especially, like, with the hacks of alchemy and, like, the way he could combine that with having 8 dragon elements, that could really make it a dangerous fight for Gajeel, because this is also a character that isn't at a spot where Gajeel should have surpassed him. If Natsu was against him, yeah, I think Natsu would pretty much be fine. Gajeel, we know Gajeel isn't at full power Natsu level, but I think this could be what leads to like a big jump for Gajeel and get a really good fight. I'm actually really interested in this. Like, God Serena is a character that I always thought was interesting and has a lot of lore stuff to him. And I'm actually, this is something I want to put near the end of the video, is I am going to do a video on an old lore theory I had on God Serena, because now I can put it out, because we might actually get some lore for him, and if I can get a theory on a like backstory, even if it's just a fun idea that isn't even close in the actual backstory reveal, I think it'll be fun to have before we get to it. I think it'll be really fun just to have that kind of like speculation of like where this character could go, because I thought it was really cool in like the, I don't want to spoil it, but then like the idea I had for where his character could kind of like be built around, because then we just got him killed, and again it made sense for where he was at and the stuff with Acnologia, but still it was just like, damn, like we didn't really get anything for this character. But he was kind of like how Georg was for the most part, or someone like Jianma, where it's like, this is a character that's cool, that seems interesting, but they got taken care of before they really got their feet off the ground. Like they were on the bench right when they get off the bench, like getting ready to go bat. A stray ball comes and hits them in the head, knocks them out pretty much. You never get to see them actually participate. But now God Serena can. So God Serena, my expectations for him, one, I just hope the fight is good. I don't need it to be amazing. I would love an amazing fight, but I'm just hoping it's a cool fight where both of the characters look good. I really would, like, my biggest thing, I think, overall, though, I want to see what all 8 of his elements are. Please, Mishima. I have a personal pet peeve, whatever series do that, whenever they introduce a character with, like, a set number, that especially, like, if it's like, oh, this guy knows 10,000 abilities, I don't expect him to show 10,000. But if this guy has 6 different things, or in God's Serena's case, he has 8 elements, it shouldn't be hard to show 8 elements. You literally could put them all in one panel and say what all of them are. Like, there's so many times where we could have had them, because it's like we were directly shown 4. We were directly shown 4, and 5 charging. Like there was a point where you could see lightning getting ready to go around his hand. So it's like, okay, we also have 5 elements. So there's 3 of his elements not shown. Super easy to show them. Like we even have colors for him in the damn anime. So God Serena, I would really appreciate it if you would just show a good display next chapter. I'm guessing this fight will be 2, maybe 2.5 chapters long. So fingers crossed on where that's gonna go. Other than that, I like his alchemy. I've got hopes on because I want to see that. It looks pretty cool in like the potential around that. Alchemy is a pretty badass ability, especially like if he's gonna have both magic and alchemy. I think that'll be really cool, and especially if we could find out more about alchemy, because there's just 2 things that like this another thing I just want to mention. There's 2 ways that it could easily go. He learned alchemy because of somehow he got into Goldal for whatever reason, or there was a level of alchemy present, or he knew how to get to Goldal or of alchemy because of Wall, because he was obviously in the Spriggan 12 with Wall. We never really get to see any form of interaction between a lot of them. But if God Serena, say God Serena knew of alchemy and knew how to do something with alchemy because of Wall. Like, oh yeah, one of the reasons I initially joined, like, not just stuff with Acnology and whatnot, is because they had an alchemist in there, high-level alchemist. I went and learned a bit of alchemy from. Maybe whatever he did with that is how he's alive, and then he went and joined Gold Owl. Like, maybe this was like, oh yeah, well, I learned alchemy, I like alchemy, I don't want to be a wizard anymore, I'm going to go do that, or something. Or maybe the whole idea of the Wheel of Dharma thing, it's like, it's a way that it set up his abilities. He'll revive, but he can't use magic anymore, so he goes to be an alchemist. Who knows? We'll have to wait to see. This is way more of one of those chapters that ends on a cliffhanger that it's like, I'm so excited. I can wait the 2 weeks for the next chapter. It's going to be a little rough, but I'm excited for it. Like, it's going to be really cool to see where this exactly goes. But anyway, other than that, though, comment below. Tell me your thoughts about this chapter and where you think this is all going. Like I said, this is a really weird plot twist with God Serena, but I'm interested. I really want to see what exactly Mishima has planned, because I didn't see this character coming at all. I don't think anybody did. I saw one guy on Twitter who, like, said that he was going to show up at some point, so kudos to him. But other than that, like, because it's like, it's not even that I thought Mishima, like, it's impossible to bring a character back. Like, if somebody from the future, like 5 months ago, said, God, like, do you think God's Ring will come back in 100 Years Quest? I'd say no, but it's not even like, oh, it's impossible, like, there's no way he could come back. It's more of I thought Mishima just didn't like him. I thought Mishima just didn't care about this dude. Like, my impression was that once he got to the point where he had Jacob, I don't think he wanted God Serena, because Mishima always has one of those characters in the bad guy groups or antagonist groups that's silly, and God Serena was a little goofy upon his introduction, but then we got Jacob, and Jacob obviously, like, Jacob was funnier, but I think I almost said Mark here, I think God Serena had more hype around him in general that people wanted to see, but he's like, okay, this will be a logical power level stick, it's just measuring stick to set up showing like Acnology, because it really, like, all God Serena did was he trashed the top 4 Wizard Saints, beside, you know, obviously 2 through 5, but just showed the power level gap between one Spriggan and all of them, and then showed where Acnology was. I figured the Mishima just didn't like him, and he's like, okay, you're a perfect measuring stick. Like, it makes me think, like, did he have this in mind? Because it was, I keep saying I'm going to end it soon, but it's the last couple things. Because I know that during Tartaros, he intended for Alvarez to be the end, but while riding Alvarez, they had already come up with 100 Years Quest. So did he kill, like, is there an idea that he killed off God Serena with the intent, I might bring this guy back one day? Who knows? It might just be like a way that he works it in, makes it work, and we get the fight. But other than that, I'm interested, like I said, to see how it goes. I really appreciate it, though. You know, comment below, thumbs up the video, press the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. With that, I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed. And thank you all for listening. Bye.